What I'm about to tell you happened in the Masai Mara, and it's the reason why no safari guide will camp within 500 meters of a baobab tree after sunset. The local Maasai have a saying, the baobab remembers everything, and some memories should stay buried. 3 weeks ago, I learned exactly what they meant. Welcome to Storyweaver, where ancient fears meet modern nightmares. This is the story of Dr. Elena Vasquez, a wildlife researcher who discovered that some African legends exist for a reason. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 6 months studying elephant migration patterns in the Kenyan savannah. As a behavioral ecologist from Barcelona, she prided herself on being rational, scientific, and thoroughly modern. Local superstitions, she believed, were merely cultural remnants from a less enlightened time. Her research camp was positioned strategically near a massive baobab tree, one of those ancient giants that looked like it had been planted upside down by the gods. The tree provided perfect shade for her equipment during the scorching days and an excellent vantage point for observing the elephant herds. Her Maasai guide, Samuel, had been uncomfortable with the location from day one. Daktari, he'd said, using the Swahili word for doctor. This tree is Mti wa Uchawi, a tree of sorcery. The elders say it holds the spirits of those who died in great suffering. Elena had politely dismissed his concerns. She was here for science, not folklore. That changed on the night of the new moon. Elena was cataloging the day's recordings when she heard the first sound, a low, rhythmic drumming that seemed to come from inside the baobab's massive trunk. The sound was so deep, it vibrated through the ground and into her bones. She grabbed her audio equipment, thinking she'd discovered some unknown acoustic phenomenon. But as she approached the tree, the drumming stopped. What she found carved into the bark made her blood run cold. Fresh cymbals, still weeping sap, covered the trunk at eye level. They weren't random scratches. They were deliberate, purposeful markings that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. And they were arranged in a perfect spiral, leading up the trunk and into the canopy above. Elena recognized some of the symbols from her anthropology studies. They were warnings, boundary markers, the kind used in ancient African rituals to contain something dangerous. She photographed everything, but when she reviewed the images on her camera, the symbols appeared to be moving, shifting, rearranging themselves into new patterns. She blinked hard, assuming fatigue was playing tricks on her eyes. At 2:47 a.m., the drumming started again. This time, Elena was ready. She activated her night vision camera and pointed it at the tree. What she saw through the viewfinder defied everything she thought she knew about the natural world. The baobab tree was breathing. The massive trunk expanded and contracted in a slow, deliberate rhythm. With each breath, the carved symbols glowed with a sickly phosphorescent light. And something was moving inside the tree. Something large, pressing against the bark from within, trying to get out. Elena's scientific mind raced for explanations. Gas expansion? Parasitic organisms? Bioluminescent fungi? But deep down, she knew she was witnessing something that couldn't be explained by any textbook. The drumming grew louder, more urgent. Other sounds joined it. Whispers in languages she didn't recognize, the scraping of claws against wood, and underneath it all, the sound of voices crying out in agony. That's when she saw them. Figures emerged from the base of the tree like smoke, becoming solid. They were human-shaped, but wrong. Elongated limbs, faces that seemed to shift and blur, and eyes that glowed with the same phosphorescent light as the symbols. They moved with purpose, circling Elena's camp, testing the boundaries of her electric fence. Elena grabbed her satellite phone to call for help, but the screen showed only static. Her radio equipment was dead. Even her GPS had stopped working. The display showed her location as coordinates that didn't exist on any map. The figures were getting closer. They moved through the fence like it wasn't there, their feet never quite touching the ground. Eleanor could see now that they weren't solid. They were made of shadows and starlight, held together by ancient rage and unfathomable hunger. She ran for her Land Rover, but the engine wouldn't start. The figures surrounded the vehicle, pressing their translucent faces against the windows. Their mouths moved in unison, and Elena realized they were trying to tell her something. In her growing terror, she understood. They weren't trying to harm her, they were trying to warn her. Something else was coming. The baobab tree began to split open with a sound like the world cracking in half. From within its hollow trunk, something ancient and terrible began to emerge. Elena caught only a glimpse: writhing tentacles, too many teeth, and eyes like burning coals, before the shadow figures surrounded her completely. When she woke up, she was 50 kilometers away, lying beside a road with no memory of how she'd gotten there. Her equipment was gone, her camp had vanished, and when she led rescue teams back to the location, they found only empty savanna. No baobab tree, no signs that a camp had ever been there. But Elena's camera, found days later by a Maasai herder, contained one final image: herself, standing beside the massive tree. But in the photograph, she wasn't alone. Dozens of translucent figures stood with her, their hands resting protectively on her shoulders. The local Maasai identified them immediately. They were the spirits of researchers, explorers, and colonizers who had camped too close to sacred places, who had ignored the warnings, who had disturbed what should have remained undisturbed. They had saved Elena from becoming one of them. Elena returned to Barcelona, but she never published her research. She keeps the camera hidden in her office, and on quiet nights, she swears she can still hear the drumming from that ancient tree. The Maasai say the baobab appears only to those who need to learn respect for the old ways. It's a teacher, not a predator, but its lessons come with a price. Those who survive carry its warnings for the rest of their lives. Remember, when the locals tell you not to go somewhere, there's usually a very good reason. This has been Story Weaver, bringing you the stories that blur the line between legend and reality. Subscribe for more tales from the dark corners of our world.